I'm Jordan Baker, 25, female. I'm a firefighter, living and working in a city that feels more like a sprawling concrete beast than a home. It's not just a job for me, it's a calling that runs 4 generations deep in my family. I live in a small apartment that always smells faintly of smoke, a scent that's more comforting to me than any perfume. I thought my life's purpose was simple: run into burning buildings when everyone else is running out. But I was about to learn that the most dangerous fires aren't the ones you can see. They're the ones smoldering in the hearts of men who crave power more than honor. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. For the first few years of my career, life was a rhythm of bells, adrenaline, and the deep, bone-weary satisfaction of a job well done. I was one of the youngest firefighters at Station 12, but I'd proven myself. I was strong, I was fast, and I never hesitated. My crew was my second family, a brotherhood and sisterhood forged in heat and hardship. Among the veterans, Sarah Jenkins, a tough-as-nails engineer with 20 years on the job, had taken me under her wing. "You've got good instincts, Baker," she'd say, her voice raspy from years of shouting over sirens. "Just don't ever let the politics of this place burn you out." I didn't understand what she meant, not really. To me, the department was a pure meritocracy. The only thing that mattered was how you performed when lives were on the line. Our fire chief, Michael Evans, was a department legend. He had the silver hair, the chiseled jaw, and a collection of stories about heroic rescues that he'd trot out at every press conference. He seemed to take a special interest in my career, often singling me out for praise. He saw the same fire in me, he said, that he'd had as a young recruit. Because of my family's history and my dedication, my station had nominated me to be their union representative. It was an added responsibility, mostly involving meetings about scheduling and benefits, but I took it seriously. It was a chance to fight for my crew in a different way. That's how I ended up in the middle of the biggest negotiation in our department's history, the city's new $50 million equipment contract. Our gear was aging. Our breathing apparatuses were nearing their expiration date, our turnout coats were worn thin, and the hydraulics on our ladder trucks were getting sluggish. This contract was supposed to be our salvation, a complete overhaul that would bring us into the 21st century. The choice was between 2 suppliers. One was a legacy brand, North Star Safety, trusted for decades, known for its reliability and fair pricing. The other was a newer, flashy company, Titan Safety Corp., whose bids were consistently higher, but who had a powerful marketing team and friends in high places. As the union rep, I was part of the advisory committee, sitting in meetings with Chief Evans and city officials. My job was to advocate for the gear that we, the firefighters, knew was best, and that was North Star, hands down. Chief, their durability tests are unmatched. I'd argue in one of the meetings, pointing to a thick binder of data. Titan's gear looks good, but it's heavier, and we're seeing reports of seal failures in other departments. Chief Evans would nod gravely, steepling his fingers. "Your passion is admirable, Jordan. I hear you. We have to weigh all the factors, of course. Budgets, long-term maintenance contracts. It's a complex picture." Another voice on the committee was Ben Carter, a firefighter from another station. Ben was a few years older than me and had made it clear he thought he should have been the union rep. He was ambitious, always laughing a little too loudly at the chief's jokes, and he constantly challenged my points. "We can't be afraid of innovation, Jordan," Ben would say smoothly, parroting Titan's marketing slogans. "Titan is the future, lighter materials, integrated tech. North Star is yesterday's news." I saw right through him. He wasn't arguing for the gear, he was arguing for the chief's favor. Still, I was confident. The facts were on my side. The firefighters I represented were overwhelmingly in favor of North Star. I felt like I was doing important work, protecting the people who protected the city. The air was clean, the path forward seemed clear, and I had no idea that an arsonist was already laying the kindling for a blaze that would consume my entire world. The negotiations dragged on for weeks, becoming increasingly contentious. The city was pushing hard for Titan, citing a more comprehensive long-term service package that sounded like corporate nonsense to me. In reality, Titan was greasing palms and hosting fancy dinners for city council members. Chief Evans, who I expected to be our staunchest advocate, became frustratingly neutral. "I have to maintain a professional distance," he explained when I pressed him. "My recommendation must be seen as impartial." His impartiality felt like a betrayal. We were his people. His job was to fight for our safety. The tension culminated in a closed-door meeting between the union board, the chief, and the city manager. The city presented its final offer, a budget that could only be met by choosing Titan Safety Corp. It was a lowball tactic designed to force our hand. We argued, we presented our data, but they wouldn't budge. The union decided to hold firm. We would recommend our members vote no on the city's budget if it meant being saddled with inferior equipment. It was a risky move, a potential political firestorm, but our safety was non-negotiable. The details of that meeting were strictly confidential. A leak could be catastrophic, painting the union as obstructionist and greedy before we could even explain our position to the public. We all swore an oath of silence. 2 days later, the spark hit the fuel. The headline on the front page of the city's biggest newspaper read, "Firefighters Union Rejects Safety Upgrade, Demands More Expensive Gear." The article was a masterpiece of spin, quoting an anonymous high-level source who detailed our confidential rejection of the city's offer. It claimed we were putting politics ahead of safety and were beholden to our old friends at North Star. The story twisted our stance completely, making us the villains. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Public opinion turned against us overnight. We were flooded with angry emails and phone calls. City council members who had once supported us were now distancing themselves. Chief Evans called an emergency meeting at the department headquarters. His face was a mask of cold fury. He stood before the union board, his eyes sweeping across the room before landing on me. "We have a traitor in our midst," he announced, his voice booming with authority. Someone in this room decided their personal agenda was more important than the integrity of this department. Someone leaked our strategy to the press and set this entire department on fire. He let the accusation hang in the air. My heart hammered in my chest. Who would do that? Why, it made no sense. The leak only hurt us. This leak has jeopardized the entire $50 million contract. He continued, his gaze still locked on me. It has made us look weak and divided. I am launching a full and immediate internal investigation. We will find the source and they will be dealt with. I promise you that. He was looking at me, but I told myself it was just my imagination. I was the newest member of the board, the most passionate advocate for North Star. It was probably just his way of showing how serious this was, but then I saw Ben Carter standing near the back of the room. He was looking at me too, and on his face was a faint, triumphant smirk. A cold dread, colder than any winter night, began to creep up my spine. The chief wasn't just looking for a culprit. He already had one in mind. The investigation was swift and brutally efficient. It felt less like a search for the truth and more like a targeted demolition. The department's IT specialists were dispatched to seize the computers of everyone on the union board. They took my work laptop, my personal tablet, everything. I complied without argument, knowing I had nothing to hide. I'd spent my life being honest to a fault. It was the only way I knew how to be. 2 days later, I was summoned to Chief Evans' office. The air was thick with a kind of predatory silence. The chief sat behind his massive oak desk, a symbol of power and tradition. Across from him sat a humorless woman from Human Resources. They didn't ask me to sit down. "Jordan," the chief began, his voice devoid of the warmth I was used to. "We've completed our preliminary investigation." He slid a folder across the desk. It stopped just at the edge, forcing me to lean forward to see it. Inside were printouts of an email. The sender was my union email address. The recipient was a well-known investigative reporter at the city newspaper. The email, dated the night of our confidential meeting, laid out our entire strategy in cold, precise detail. "It was the leak. I didn't write this." I stammered, my mind struggling to catch up. "This isn't real. I would never." "The IT department confirmed it was sent from your laptop, from your apartment's IP address," the HR woman said flatly. "The digital forensics are conclusive. It's impossible." I insisted, my voice rising. "Someone must have hacked my account. This is a setup." Chief Evans sighed, a theatrical display of disappointment. "We also have a witness statement. Ben Carter has come forward. He said he overheard you in the hallway after the meeting, upset, saying that if the board didn't listen to you, you'd make them listen. He said you were adamant about winning this fight, no matter the cost." The floor fell away from me. Ben, of course. It was a complete lie, a twisted version of a conversation where I'd said I would work tirelessly to make our case. He had warped my words into a threat. This was a coordinated attack, a frame job so perfect it was suffocating. "Chief, you've known me for years." I pleaded, looking him in the eye, searching for the man who had called me the future of the department. You know my family, you know this isn't me." He broke eye contact, looking down at his desk. "What I know, Jordan, is that I have an email with your name on it and a corroborating witness. I have a $50 million deal in flames and a department in chaos. My hands are tied." He looked back up, his face hard as granite. "Effective immediately. You are suspended pending termination. You are to turn in your badge and vacate your locker. You are not to have contact with any active department personnel. We're done here." I stood there, stunned into silence. The words didn't even register at first. Fired, it wasn't possible. The department was my life, my identity. Being a firefighter was who I was. Without it, what was left? They had an escort walk me to my locker. As I packed my belongings into a cardboard box, my crew from Station 12 watched from a distance, their faces a mixture of confusion and pity. No one spoke to me. The chief's edict had already spread. I was a pariah. As I walked out of the station for the last time, the smell of diesel and clean floors replaced by the sterile scent of betrayal. I saw Ben Carter standing by the engine. He didn't look triumphant anymore. He just looked away, refusing to meet my eyes, and in that moment of cowardice, I knew with absolute certainty that this was all a lie. They hadn't just fired me. They had set a fire to ruin me, and now they were watching me burn. The first week was a blur of shame and disbelief. My name was dragged through the mud in the press. I was the disgruntled firefighter who had sabotaged her own department. My family was horrified. My friends didn't know what to believe, and my phone, once constantly buzzing with messages from my crew, went silent. I felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of a life that was no longer mine. I'd spent hours just staring at the wall, the silence of my apartment a roaring accusation. The only person who reached out was Sarah Jenkins. She showed up at my door with 2 cups of coffee and an expression that was blessedly free of judgment. "Don't say a word," she said, pushing past me into the kitchen. "I've seen how Evans operates. He finds a scapegoat when things get hot. This stinks to high heaven." Her belief in me was the first drop of rain on a scorched earth. We sat at my small kitchen table, and for the first time I told someone the whole story, the details of the frame job, the doctored email, Ben's lie. "It doesn't make sense, Sarah," I said, my voice hoarse. "Why would the chief want to do this? The leak only benefits Titan. It forces the city to accept their deal to make the problem go away. It makes the union look bad and, wait, a thought began to form in my mind, a tiny, flickering ember. "Who benefits?" Sarah asked quietly, reading my expression. "Titan benefits," I repeated, the pieces starting to click into place. "And who was pushing for Titan from the beginning, even when the data didn't support it?" "Ben Carter," Sarah offered. "No, not just him. Ben's a pawn. He was just echoing someone else." I said, my mind racing. Chief Evans. He was playing the impartial leader, but he was subtly steering everything towards Titan. What if he wasn't impartial at all? What if he's in on it? It seemed unthinkable. A fire chief, a man sworn to protect his firefighters, knowingly pushing for inferior gear. For what money? "It's a big accusation, Jordan," Sarah said cautiously. "You need more than a hunch." She was right. I needed proof. My suspension meant I was locked out of all department systems, but my mind was my own. For the past year, as union rep, I'd sat through countless hours of budget presentations and vendor meetings. I had filled notebooks with details, numbers, names. My obsession with being prepared was about to become my greatest weapon. I turned my apartment into a command center. I spent days sifting through my old notes, cross-referencing public records, and diving into the labyrinth of city contracts and campaign finance disclosures. I started by investigating Titan Safety Corp. They were relatively new, but had secured massive contracts in 3 other cities over the past 2 years. In each case, there were whispers of backroom deals and unusually close relationships with city officials. Then I focused on Chief Evans. His lifestyle seemed modest, but a deeper search of property records uncovered something interesting. 2 months ago, a luxury condo on the coast had been purchased by an LLC with a generic name. Digging into the LLC registration documents, I found the name of the registered agent, a lawyer I recognized. He was the brother-in-law of Titan Safety's CEO. It was a connection, but it was thin. The real breakthrough came from a place I least expected. I remembered a conversation during a vendor fair where a low-level Titan sales rep had complained about his boss. He'd mentioned how the company had a special consulting fund for friends of the company. It was a throwaway comment, but now it seemed significant. Finding that sales rep took a week of scouring social media. His name was Kevin. I sent him a message explaining that I was an independent researcher looking into municipal procurement practices. I didn't mention I was a fired firefighter. To my surprise, he agreed to meet. He was young, disillusioned, and clearly unhappy at his job. We met at a coffee shop far from the city center. I laid out what I suspected, carefully, without naming Chief Evans directly. Kevin's face grew pale. He nervously stirred his coffee, looking over his shoulder. "Look, I could lose my job for this," he whispered. "But you're not wrong. There's a slush fund. It's run through a third-party consulting firm. It's how they grease the wheels. They find a key decision. Make her figure out what they want. A vacation, a boat, a finder's fee, and they make it happen. My boss calls it aggressive relation. Building, my heart was pounding. Can you prove it? I asked. Kevin hesitated. There are expense reports, coded project names. I don't have access to the main files, but I see the paperwork. There's one project code that's been getting a lot of action lately. Project Golden Eagle. It's a big one, millions, a golden eagle. The symbol of a fire chief, it was him, I knew it. Now I just had to get the proof. The ashes of my career were all around me, but deep within them, a plan was starting to glow. Kevin was my inside source, but he was terrified. He could point me to the smoke, but he couldn't deliver the fire itself. He agreed to discreetly send me any uncensored paperwork he came across related to Project Golden Eagle, but he couldn't risk accessing the core accounting files. For that, I needed something more. I needed leverage. My investigation had shown that Chief Evans was the primary recipient of Titan's generosity, but Ben Carter was the linchpin of my framing. He was the one who lied. He was weaker, more pliable. I decided to focus on him first. Sarah helped me. She was my eyes and ears inside the department. She told me that Ben had just received a promotion to lieutenant, a move that was suspiciously fast, tracked by the chief's office. He was also driving a new truck, one that was far too expensive for a firefighter's salary. He was arrogant, but his new status made him sloppy. I started by creating a fake email account and a fake identity, a journalist named Mark Cole, supposedly writing a flattering expose on the future leaders of the fire department. I emailed Ben, telling him he'd been recommended by a senior official as a rising star. His ego, predictable as a sunrise, took the bait immediately. He agreed to an interview. We met at a neutral location, a quiet corner of a park. I was disguised in a baseball cap and glasses, using a voice recorder on my phone. I started by stroking his ego, asking about his new promotion, his ambitions. He puffed up, bragging about his skills and how the chief recognized his potential. It must have been tough. I said sympathetically, seeing your colleague, Jordan Baker, betray the department like that. You were the one who came forward, right? That took courage. Someone had to. Ben said, his chest swelling. She was reckless, all that talk about honor and tradition, but when it came down to it, she was willing to burn the whole department down to get her way. Chief Evans knew she was a liability. I leaned in, lowering my voice. I heard a rumor that your promotion was a reward for your loyalty. He flinched, a flicker of panic in his eyes. I earned my promotion. My record speaks for itself, of course, I said smoothly. It's just, my sources tell me that loyalty is very valuable to companies like Titan Safety Corp. They appreciate people who help clear the way for progress. A new truck, maybe, a little bonus for being a team player. The color drained from his face. He knew I wasn't just a journalist. He started to stammer, denying everything, but his eyes darted around nervously. He was caught. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, standing up to leave. Ben, listen to me, I said, my voice hardening. I know about the $30,000 payment that was routed to you from the same consulting firm that handles Titan's Project Golden Eagle. I know it was your reward for planting the fake email on my laptop and lying to the chief. I was bluffing about the payment details, but his reaction told me I'd hit the bullseye. He froze. Who are you? He whispered. I took off my glasses. His eyes widened in shock and fear. You know who I am, I said. And you have a choice. You can go down with a corrupt chief who will throw you away the second he's caught, or you can help the person you framed make things right. You have 24 hours to decide. I walked away, leaving him standing there, pale and trembling. The wait was agonizing. For a full day, I heard nothing. I started to think my gamble had failed. Then, late the next night, my phone buzzed. It was an anonymous email. Attached was a single audio file. I clicked play. It was a recording of a phone call, tinny and full of static, but the voices were clear. It was Ben and Chief Evans. Ben was panicking, talking about a journalist who knew everything. The chief's voice was cold and dismissive. "Calm down, you idiot," the chief snapped. "You got your money and your promotion. Stick to the story. She has nothing. It's her word against ours. Who do you think they're going to believe?" Then came the final damning line. "I own this process, Ben," the chief said. "That Titan contract is signed. It's done. That little brat Baker is a footnote. Now shut up and do your job." I had it. I had the confession, but it wasn't enough to just clear my name. They had tried to incinerate my reputation in a public forum. I was going to return the favor. My plan wasn't just to expose them. It was to use their own stage, their own audience, to sound an alarm they would never forget. The city council was scheduled to hold its final budget hearing in 3 days. The centerpiece of the agenda was the formal ratification of the $50 million equipment contract with Titan Safety Corp. The meeting would be televised on the local public access channel, and a few reporters would be there, but it was generally considered a formality. The deal was done. Chief Evans would be there, front and center, to give a final statement on why this contract was vital for the city's safety. It was meant to be his victory lap. It was going to be his public execution. Getting a spot to speak during the public comment section was my first hurdle. They typically only allowed registered lobbyists or community leaders. So, I didn't register as myself. I registered as the spokesperson for a newly created group, the Coalition for Firefighter Accountability. It sounded official enough to get me on the list. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of preparation. I compiled everything I had. The LLC documents for the chief's condo, the coded expense reports Kevin had leaked, Ben's recorded confession, and a detailed report showing the performance failures of Titan's gear in other cities. I put it all into a crisp, professional presentation, complete with slides. Sarah acted as my quality control, fact-checking every claim. "If you're going to set a fire," she said grimly, "make sure it burns clean." The day of the hearing, my nerves were shot. I felt like a rookie walking into my first 5-alarm blaze. I sat in the back of the city council chamber, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I saw Chief Evans arrive, flanked by city officials. He looked confident, smiling and shaking hands. He sat in the front row, directly in my line of sight. Ben Carter was not there. He had clearly been ordered to stay away. I watched as the council members droned on about zoning permits and park budgets. Finally, the council president announced the main item. Next on the agenda is the approval of the contract with Titan Safety Corp. We will first hear a final recommendation from Fire Chief Michael Evans. The chief walked to the podium, radiating authority. He spoke for 10 minutes, his voice filled with feigned passion about progress, innovation, and the sacred duty of protecting the city. He painted the Titan contract as a landmark achievement. He finished to a round of polite applause. "Thank you, Chief," the council president said. "We have one registered speaker on this item. From the Coalition for Firefighter Accountability, Ms. Jordan Baker." A ripple of murmuring went through the room. I saw Chief Evans' head snap up. His confident smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure shock. He stared at me as I walked calmly to the podium, my face a neutral mask. I could feel his panic from across the room. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady, amplified by the microphone. "My name is Jordan Baker. Until 3 weeks ago, I was a firefighter with this city. I was fired by Chief Evans for allegedly leaking confidential information about this very contract, a crime for which I was framed to cover up the real story." The room went silent. The reporters started scribbling furiously. "The chief is correct that this contract is a landmark achievement." I continued, looking directly at him. "It is a landmark achievement in corruption." For the next 15 minutes, I laid out my case. I put the LLC documents on the overhead projector. I detailed the Project Golden Eagle Slush Fund. I explained how the leak was orchestrated to discredit the union and force a deal that was bad for firefighters and bad for the city. And then I played the audio file. The chief's voice, cold and arrogant, filled the chamber. "I own this process. That Titan contract is signed. It's done. That little brat Baker is a footnote." The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye in the room was on Chief Evans. His face was ashen, a mask of disbelief and fury. He started to stand, to object, but the council president held up a hand. "Chief Evans, please remain seated." I delivered my closing statement. "This isn't about one contract. It's about a culture of corruption that puts profits before the lives of the people who run into danger when you run away. You were about to hand $50 million to a company that paid for the privilege, and you were going to do it using equipment that is Verifiably less safe. I was fired for telling the truth. I ask you now, who is the real traitor to this department? I turned and walked back to my seat, my legs shaking but my head held high. The alarm had been sounded. The fire was spreading, and for the first time in weeks, I wasn't the one getting burned. The aftermath was a political firestorm. The city council immediately voted to freeze the Titan's safety contract. The district attorney's office, alerted by a dozen calls from reporters who had been in the room, launched a full-scale criminal investigation that very night. Chief Evans was placed on administrative leave by an emergency vote, escorted from his office before he could shred a single document. His reign was over. My story was everywhere, the front page of every paper, the lead story on the evening news. I was no longer the disgruntled leaker. I was the whistleblower who had exposed a massive corruption scandal. My phone, once deathly silent, now buzzed incessantly with calls from reporters, lawyers, and most importantly, my fellow firefighters. The crew from Station 12 showed up at my apartment, not with pity, but with apologies and respect. The shame I had carried for weeks finally lifted. Ben Carter, facing his own set of charges, cooperated fully with investigators in exchange for a plea deal. He confessed everything, how the chief had preyed on his ambition, how they had used a simple phishing link to gain access to my laptop, and how the $30,000 had been deposited into an offshore account. His career was over, but he avoided serious jail time. Chief Evans wasn't so lucky. The investigation uncovered a deep rot. The Project Golden Eagle Fund was just the tip of the iceberg. He had been taking kickbacks for years, on everything from new fire hydrants to the brand of coffee in the station kitchens. He was indicted on multiple counts of fraud, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The legend had crumbled, revealing a petty, greedy man beneath the heroic facade. The city formally expunged my record and issued a public apology. I was offered my job back with full back pay. Walking back into Station 12, wearing my uniform for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, was one of the proudest moments of my life. Sarah Jenkins was there to greet me with a bear hug that nearly cracked my ribs. But things were different now. I was different. The experience had forged something new in me. I had discovered a different kind of fire to fight, not one of smoke and flame, but of corruption and injustice. When the union held a special election for a new president, my name was the only one nominated. I accepted. My first act as president was to work with the now reformed city council to pass the Firefighter Integrity Act, a set of transparency laws that ensured all future equipment contracts would be subject to public review and rigorous, independent testing. We reopened negotiations, and a few months later, every firefighter in the city was issued brand new, top-of-the-line gear from North Star Safety. They tried to burn me down, to reduce my life and my family's legacy to ashes. But they forgot the first thing you learn about fire. From the ashes, something new and often stronger can rise. My name is Jordan Baker. I'm a firefighter and a union president, and my work is just beginning.